So that's me. Hello, welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Michael Harris, a itinerant guest host, periodically here to bring hopefully interesting perspectives and guests to the show. And tonight I'm very pleased to have with me two gentlemen who are instrumental in a new chapter of the Green Party in Connecticut, the Shoreline Green chapter, Owen Charles and James Conolly. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Michael.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to spend the next close to an hour talking about what the Shoreline chapter is all about, and maybe even a little bit of a primer for folks that are watching. That I know there are many people that are involved with the Green Party in New London that watch the show, but there may be some other folks that want to know more, especially at this time in history, which is something we're going to talk about, know more about the Green Party. By the way, I am a former president of the Earth Charter Community of the Lower Valley, which was a local nonprofit up in the Connecticut River area. And the Earth Charter is a document that was developed through an international conversation to identify something that we've known for a very long time, and those are the principles of sustainability. And in this case, very much similar to the Green Party values, the Earth Charter values or principles basically are peace and nonviolence, social and economic justice, and environmental sustainability. So I'm sure we'll find a lot of parallels to that, and that's why I do this work periodically to help bring forth those values into everyday conversation. So it's great to have you guys here. You're actually have been reinvigorated, to say the least, in terms of the Green Party in Connecticut. So tell me a little bit about why that has come to be at this time.
Sure. Well, I'm Owen Charles. I'm a co-chair of the party along with Jim, and the Shoreline chapter of the Green Party. And I think we're looking to harness the energy of the moment. We were both involved in Occupy. We were both involved in the Bernie movement, and I think millions of people were brought out into activism by the inspiration of a real people's agenda that was represented by Bernie Sanders. And I see us as the next logical step, putting this into a real people's party where we can express and realize real power through a mass movement. And
attract the people, and I would think attract and encourage people to visit those values that they may have in themselves as well, and express them.
I'm what I would call I was, I think, a passive Green. I voted for Ralph Nader every opportunity that I had.
Sure.
Which wasn't every opportunity I should have had because of some ballot problems and so on. I even remember one election, if my poor memory serves me, Ralph was available and a Green Party national candidate was available. They were both available. I remember I chose Ralph. That's a terrible thing. But so at the national level, for at least 20, 25 years, I have not supported either one of the major parties. But the idea of becoming an active member of the Green Party is something that had not appeared to me to be politically important, because I had not completely disentangled myself from the irrational belief that somehow or other the Democratic Party would come around.
Yeah.
It just took, you know what I'm saying? I was voting Green, at least at the presidential level, but there was this thing that was like holding me, like, so I was a registered independent for a long time, and I wasn't a registered Green. So it's only in the last 4 months that I became a registered Green. And that's because two things happened during the Bernie thing, okay? And I got out and I stumped for Bernie, and I did all kinds of, web-based stuff for Bernie and so on, and I really tried, I saw Bernie, and this is going to sound, I don't know, maybe some people might not like this, but I saw Bernie as a great platform for having good political discourse and propagandizing and sort of reinvigorating left discourse. A lot of people, especially young people, who hadn't really heard somebody make intelligent statements to the left of center. Okay?
Progressive statements.
Progressive
sure.
statements. Anything other than the normal neoliberal bullcrap, okay, that's literally dominated the whole national rhetoric since the 1990s. Yeah. To have this stuff voiced was great, so of course I felt I had to get in there and help to fan the flames and that kind of stuff,
Absolutely.
But it demonstrated the other thing too. Okay, one is under the right conditions, the electoral system can become actually political in a sensible way. You can talk about real issues. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that if the only way that you can do it is inside the Democratic Party, well then it's all just going to go down into this giant sound and memory hole and never come back.
Then you see what you get. And we saw what you get.
And Bernie demonstrated these two things. The first part of the campaign demonstrated number one. The second part of the campaign demonstrated number two. And it was such a clear demonstration that by the end of it all, it was like, okay, I'm full out green. Okay? Because that's the only way that we can get these issues. That's the only way that we can get these issues really talked about.
And your experience, and my experience is very similar to yours in terms of having identified the major parties as not serving what I thought needed to be served, and being an independent for a long time. And then also seeing Bernie Sanders as someone who was speaking progressive values, progressive truths to power, so to speak, and wanting to support that. And then after seeing the debacle that really was the primary this year,
and the election,
and the election. And I also have matured enough, and I'll just mention that so now I am a Green Party member as well, which is probably why they let me host this. I don't know. I think they let me host it before I was too, because I spoke the same values, and it was only in me as I learned to articulate and understand my core values that I recognized that they lined up very well, very much with the Green Party. And Jill Stein, we'll talk about her, speaks those values very well as well. So it just became clear that I needed to also do more than just be independent. And so interestingly, this energy that you guys are both describing, and I am too, I guess, it's you've channeled it into a new chapter of the Green Party in Connecticut. So what does that mean, and how is that? It certainly sounds like progress for the Connecticut Green Party, is it?
Right. So it's laying the groundwork for a people's movement to kind of continue and build. It's one thing to have a national candidate, but it really helps to have visibility and a presence locally so that you can start to actually build a real third party. 60% of Americans in national polling would like to see a third party. This is a great time and opportunity to finally overcome the barriers of a kind of two-party duopoly. And people's eyes are open to that. Their eyes are open to the fact that our system is rigged, that there is really corporate money controlling both major parties, and that a progressive or an independent voice is not going to be heard or is going to be quashed within those two parties. So there's that, and establishing a Shoreline Green Party is one way of letting people know, hey, it's okay to be green. We know you're here, and you can get involved and actually run for office, support statewide, local issues that are of appeal to progressives and to Greens, and to do something to actually build this movement. The Green Party is not it's not a major party right now, but it is also not a marginalized party in that it's in all 50 states, it's in 90 countries, and there's a lot of possibility. So when people are looking for another opportunity, and some are looking to push Bernie or others into a populist third party, the logical place for Bernie folks to go is the Green Party. If you read the platform, if you look at the 10 key principles, they're very much aligned with what Bernie stood for and what 13 million people came out and voted for.
So I hear you talking about building a foundation that's really necessary beyond just having a charismatic national candidate. But what is also very hopeful thought is that, and think about it, in the world today, the idea that we need to think globally, and the Green Party and its values are represented around the world. That's not necessarily something you can say for the Democratic or the Republican parties of the United States, and that actually gives me hope because of the power in that idea. So
our neighbor to the north, for instance, Canada, has a very, very powerful Green Party,
which we never hear about.
Very powerful Green Party. We don't hear about it because, for one thing, we're not supposed to hear about it. Exactly. I mean, the idea that in this sister democracy, quote unquote, that there actually is a multi-party system operating, okay, that they haven't managed to throttle it down to these two completely tweedledummer parties, okay, in Canada. There's actually a little bit of life there, okay. And of course, Justin Trudeau, who I must say I have mixed feelings about it. My family is actually half Canadian. My only sibling, a brother, is in Canada, and so a whole half of my family is in Canada. And I could live there just as easily as I could in the United States, okay? But you know, Trudeau is, for all intents and purposes, you know, kind of like what a liberal Democrat would be here. He promised to open up the electoral system in Canada, okay? And somebody did a projection of what the Canadian electoral system would look like if you opened it up. And this is why Trudeau and the Liberals won't open it up, and why even NDP doesn't want to open it up, which is their, you know, they're to the left of the Liberal parties, or is it to the left? We can't tell anymore because some of their economic policies are extremely regressive. But and then of course you've got the Parti Québécois and additional smaller parties. But if he actually went over to the electoral reform that he was talking about, which was a proportional representation system, the Greens, even voting in their current strengths across Canada, would have something on the order of 7 to 8% representation in the Canadian National Parliament. In other words, they'd be in a position, as fragmented as the Canadian Party, they'd be in they would necessarily force a coalition situation.
Because they would have influence.
So they're not going to allow that to happen, but I raise that to say that, you know, people who think, oh, the Greens, oh, that's pie in the sky, that could never happen. No, in Canada, actually, if some more things would shift, the Green Party would nationally become a major player. And I hope people realize this. In some parts of Canada, Greens have held power. In British Columbia, Greens have held power.
And in Europe as well.
And in Europe, they've held power.
Including recently, the Greens tripled, almost quadrupled their presence in the parliament in the Netherlands and helped defeat Geert Wilders, who was a far-right candidate. But they also, a Green candidate, won the presidency of Austria, you know, defeating a right-wing candidate. So the force that Greens can wield is real, and we see it in action. Canada, Austria, Netherlands, and that's, I think, part of the reason why it's exciting to be part of a worldwide movement, because there are connecting issues across the world now, including climate change, obviously.
Exactly.
But also kind of a globalized corporate, crony corporate capitalism that is wielding influence to the detriment of middle class, lower income folks. And you know, there's a sense of economic injustice.
So around the world.
Around the world.
Now, in the United States, is it just a corporate oligarchy, or is it, you were speaking a little bit about this just a few minutes ago, in terms of oligarchies in this country? I mean, where is the power, right? And what do we do about it?
Since as Greens, we know we don't have it at this point. Right?
So
we feel this strong lack of power.
The beauty of this experience is that we
have a complete lack of power. You know, the United States, during my lifetime, I'm now 67 years old, the United States has become, on a consistent basis, a much more closed and oligarchic system than it was at the time that I was born. Okay, and you know, I've been watching things, I've been looking at things, okay, and I see. Well, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Born in 1950, grew up in a blue-collar town in central Michigan. I was born in Marshall, Michigan, and I grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. And I had to train myself to say Battle Creek because everybody that I knew called it Battle Creek, okay? But so you had a combination of, you know, most of the people were what we would think of as hicks, people who had rural backgrounds, farm backgrounds. All of my great-grandparents were farmers. But, you know, then there was industrialization and education and so on and so on. Well, where I grew up, it was like a working-class paradise in a very limited way. State of Michigan, auto industry, 1950s, 1960s. The mark of prosperity, and this is what everyone would say, that a factory worker could keep the automobile industry going because he or she and he, if they were a dual worker family, that they could buy a new car every year. Now, of course, there's a ton of social contradictions in that, okay? One is the fact that the cars were so crappy and they put so much salt on the roads in Michigan that you might actually need to buy a new car every year.
Keep talking.
Okay, so, you know, and it's an incredibly wasteful thing to do, to buy a new heap of steel every year. But the fact was that for a short period of time after World War II, okay, people talk about the GI Bill, they talk about, you know, they talk about the fact that the war itself, World War II, was a somewhat democratizing event.
Right.
Okay, everybody had to fight shoulder to shoulder and so on. And after all, right-wingers lost, right? You know, the fascists lost. And who won? Well, who won was Western quote-unquote democracies plus the communists. Okay, so what had to happen after that was that, of course, the Western quote-unquote democracies had to join the former fascists against the communists, okay? And that's the childhood that we had. Right. That's what we grew up in, okay? Right. So you had a vast expansion of, my childhood was affected by the fact that in most of the Midwest and the East, California and so on, workers who had previously not been in labor unions now had labor unions, okay? Most of the other industrial areas of the world had been badly damaged by the war. So the United States was the arsenal of democracy. Right. The United States had relatively little competition for a while, and it had a unionized workforce in its major industries. And so a fair amount of the rewards, the economic rewards and the social rewards, went down to at least the organized part of the working class. It was mainly white, but there was some element of the black workforce that was also organized in unions and so on, but it was mainly white. But for a while, a part of the working class, okay, actually got, look, I worked part-time in factories when I was going to college, when I went to the University of Michigan. If you would scale up what I made, okay, in factories, okay, during the summer and the year that I took off, you would scale up what a factory worker made in the state of Michigan, whether it was automobiles or cereal or whatever it was that you made. If you would scale up, it would be on the order of $35 an hour.
I know, so we look back to the 50s as this time that truly
and
was.
The 60s, and even part of the 70s.
Where there were higher wages, there were stronger unions. We hadn't yet shifted our economy away from, you know, infrastructure and making things to just military and services.
If factory workers today were making, relatively speaking, what they were then, factory workers, you know, people, assembly line workers, would be making $70,000 a year. Now, they don't make $70,000 a year. They're lucky if they make $30,000 a year, and a lot of them make less than that.
So what happened?
How did basic working people in this country, the large part of the bulk of the population, get cut by more than half in terms of their income and their access to the economy?
And their influence, too.
Oh, their influence, more than half.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
more than half.
There's a lot of factors.
How did that, and do you have any thoughts on what instigated that shift?
Well, one of the worst things
is
that you know, people are divided, you know, and conquered, whether it's distracted by issues by entertainment, or literally, left and right. We've lost a center focus, and a lot of the issues that that we talk about, that Bernie talked about, climate change, for example, a massive infrastructure bill like the Green New Deal. These are not left or right issues, really, but people have been divided, I think, and they've been manipulated. And the military-industrial complex, really, it used to be something that I thought about. Oh wow, yeah, Eisenhower talked about that, but you see the influence of it now. We're really an imperial country now, where the majority of our we have such lost opportunity costs in that the majority of our money goes to pay for the military and for maintaining thousands or hundreds, maybe thousands of military presences in other countries. We lose so much in opportunity costs that countries like Norway or Canada or UK, they don't have.
Absolutely. And
because
they
have health care and they have education for their people, and they have wonderful infrastructure.
And the framing of the issue ignores the 60% of the federal budget that goes to the military and to the Homeland Security, and frames the conversation inside of the remaining 40, which is what you're saying, the opportunity cost that's lost.
Right.
So just recently,
but
the mother of all bombs was dropped in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
All right. So we're the Green Party.
What was it? A 20,000
megaton or
pound.
Yeah.
Was it 20,000 pound, a 10-ton bomb? Is that right? Or do I have it off by an order of magnitude? I mean,
I can't host the show without bringing that up, just to at least bring it up, because as if I hadn't had anything to be ashamed of prior to that. When I heard that news,
it's straight out of Orwell. It's absolutely straight out of Orwell. I mean, you look at Orwell, and here's a guy who says, what will happen is you will keep the populations poor, but you will take the resources and you will literally dump them, as he said, if necessary. Just load the resources onto ships and sink them in the sea, okay? Or in the case of a bomb, take it up to a mountaintop and just blow this enormous contraption that costs millions of dollars. Or how about the missiles the cruise missiles sent out against Syria, okay? Yep. After telling, I think it's a terrible thing that they attacked Syria, okay? Syria is spasming, the country is in terrible turmoil. United States intervention is obviously not going to do any good. But the absurdity of it is that they even let the Russians and by implication the Syrians know. So it's kind of like ahead of time. This is just a public spectacle plus waste of resources.
And the thing is, the Democrats did not offer a choice. In fact, Hillary Clinton
a big war hoop.
was saying we should have a no-fly zone and was indicating even more eagerness to go in.
Look, the Clintons, the major reason why you can't support the Clintons, period, is that they committed genocide on the Iraqi people when they were in power. Okay? That, if you take a look at what they did and what Madeleine Albright defended, it was genocide. It was the death of hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqis. Now, you can come up with every kind of argument about that and say, well, they had a bad government and so on, and that government was complicit. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't wash.
And I'm glad to be able to at least speak that reality here today, as opposed to having it just simply buried and not acknowledged.
For the Clintons to come off as if they're representing any kind of sensible policy is a horrific lie. Yeah. Okay? They are knee deep in genocidal, cynical, real politics in the Middle East, and the number of people who have died because of their actions is in the hundreds of thousands. If we can't talk about reality at that level, then we're not talking about real politics. We're talking about some kind of monopoly game.
Right. Then just acknowledging what the Democratic Party did to try to mainstream.
And that was in the name of no-fly zones. No-fly zones killed hundreds of thousands of people. So when the same person, Hillary Clinton, comes up and says no-fly zones in Syria, so we're talking about a broken state, we're talking about the management of starvation, okay? We're talking about no real organization, simply control from the skies. Okay, this is the stuff of science fiction, but they've already done it in Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
So, did you want
So
to say
yeah,
something?
I mean, how did we get here? I mean, it is the use of fear and the use of manipulation of political issues to make people worried that, oh, I can't go outside of these two parties. I've got to stay with these parties because we're supporting the latest war, or we're supporting the military, or we're afraid of the terrorist attack. But you know what? People are starting to, you know, the popularity of the two major parties and Congress is so low, and these two candidates in this last election is so low, that people are starting to become honestly frustrated and looking for another solution. So that's how we got where we are, is that, you know, people are starting to see that the system is manipulating for, you know, behind the scenes kind of corporate interests that do not serve people interests. And people are starting to look for other opportunities.
Absolutely. And that's what the Green Party is. So we waxed momentarily there towards sort of global issues, but I might even ask if you guys are willing to, you know, to take a look at those 10 values that the Green Party has put together and
No
just
quizzes, right?
pick out a,
No
quizzes,
no
but
quiz,
pick
okay.
out one or two.
Because we're
that-
new to this, you know.
Yeah.
No,
But-
no green
and this
quizzes.
is key, though, right? Instead of being just stuck in the negative, you know, what was it? Buckminster Fuller that said, you know, build something that makes that obsolete. And the fact is, there is the opportunity for all of us to connect with who we really are and live our values. And I think those are in those 10 values that the Green Party has put together. And you might even just pull out one or two as an example of how they contrast with what we were just talking about. And I asked the question as a bridge to bring it back now to this local effort to create a chapter on the Shoreline that's going to be linked with the New London Greens, that's going to be interlinked with all of the state chapters. And how
Can we use
go
the term
back to that.
comrades?
Comrades!
I've always liked that.
I don't have anything against the term.
Okay, good.
So
Comrades.
yeah, I would say there's a few key things. One, my big issues are we've got to return to a working democratic system, and we've got to take out all of the corruption in our political system.
I'd say first, though, and this is the important thing about the Greens. I think that's second. First is connection with Mother Earth. Okay, and that's the essential green issue, is the connection with Mother Earth. Okay, if the climate disaster that we're in is not enough to open people's minds and hearts and souls to the green message, well, then we're simply doomed.
Right. These are
we're simply doomed.
These
But
are
we're so
connected
busy.
issues.
We're so
Yeah,
busy
yeah.
talking about how we're going to repeal Obamacare. You know, like to raise the healthcare issue, which I'm somewhat passionate about. But it also it reflects the level of distraction that's used to keep us from acknowledging the most pressing human issue ever.
Right.
You know?
Right. So I mean, climate change, a top issue, and economic inequality, a top issue. But before we can enact real change, we've got to take back our democratic system.
The process.
And we've got to get corporate money out. And I'm not just against corporations. I think there is a role for capitalism and innovation. I'm not totally anti-capitalist, but you can see how
We
far
differ on
it's-
that one.
Yeah.
We differ on.
It does make me wonder, like, how we deal with the infinite growth thing on a finite planet, and you know, and unless capitalism can find a way to use money that's not debt based, that doesn't require the growth of the system to service the interest on the debt, then we, you know.
Well, in the going to
got a
where
problem.
people are kind of message, I was canvassing for Bernie Sanders in a number of states over the last year and a half, and I engaged Trump supporters, and I found common ground with them on a number of issues, making healthcare affordable, making college affordable, and also, the fact that they're living in dire conditions compared to 10 or 20 years ago, where they're working for less money, working harder, and getting by with less.
Yeah.
And I don't think I don't have anything against a socialist party, but I think the way to connect with folks is to make them realize that we've got to wield political influence over our economic system, and that to incorporate economic justice. So one way that and this was a talking point of Bernie's, was, how is it that that one family, the Walton family, has as much wealth as 40% of American people, 140 million people, and Trump supporters would say, "Oh my God, yeah, you're right. I agree with Bernie on that. I could see," and I would find common ground. So I think this can go beyond a left-right.
Absolutely. I think affordable is a complex word inside of a system of funny money. When we can just make all the money we want, and then we talk about what's affordable, I don't know what that means any longer. When you recognize that money is just a made-up thing anyway, and that the characteristics of it that we use are part of what we're all actually facing on a global basis.
And that's an important insight, that the money is a made-up thing, Yeah. And that's real. Okay, and it goes to another thing that Marx noticed, by the way. That's Karl Marx. You remember that guy?
Comrade Marx.
He said, property is an illusion.
Yeah.
Property is an illusion. And he's got this amazing essay called The Fetishism of the Commodity and the Secret Thereof. It's not an easy essay, but if you can wrap your mind around the basic argument, which is that people are almost hypnotized with this idea of ownership. For instance, everything that we make is a cooperative effort. And then at the end of it, that thing that we all work to make, that's owned by somebody. Like it was always owned by somebody. But as Marx points out, wait a minute, the stuff that people made it. Yeah. People made it. Common effort made it. Okay? Then this idea that at the very end, somebody gets to latch onto it and take all the benefits from it, and treat the people who worked on it as if they just existed for the profit of the person there at the end. There's an absurdity in the whole thing.
I thought this was Owen's biography, but you have the degree in philosophy, I think.
No, I didn't. No.
Oh, no, it's you then. Okay.
No, we're both philosophers.
No, but so that conversation, though, is a very difficult one. The idea of property at the root of these questions. But yet, if you become willing to at least speak it and look at it, instead of just assume it to be true, there's a lot of intellectual growth, a lot of emotional growth that's possible, a lot of political and social growth that's possible, if you're willing to contemplate what you were just talking about. And that's what the Greens are capable of doing.
We have to get beyond the illusion of poverty, beyond the illusion of money, okay, as the current state of who's got the money, the current state of who's got the property, okay? If we buy into that as something we all need to accept, there is no hope, okay? Because the current system of money ownership and ownership in general is a machine that's just going to concentrate it higher and higher and higher and higher. And I think the Trump people see that. I mean, that it's just like this kind of crazy machine of concentration.
Oh, right.
Okay? In a way, that's what this election has brought to the surface for me, is that this game has been played over and over and over again in my lifetime, and I'm starting to see it for what it is. It's a game that people in power are playing to continue to concentrate, and because it gives them something to do. It's one thing we were just talking about.
See, people didn't believe, when we were in college, people would not have believed that the level of greed and the level of joy in just the pure concentration of money will get as far as it did, because things were relatively more equalized even in this country 50 years ago. Okay, the rich were still rich, but this idea that, how many billions do I have? I don't even know. I haven't talked to my accountant this minute.
I know.
This is very new
I used to
in the
think
history of the world.
that the middle was so important, the middle class, that as it shrank and shrank, as billionaire class grew, it would naturally right itself, because there would be mutual kind of identification with, okay, we need the middle class. We're not going to keep gutting the middle class. The owning class is going to. But
the new theory is we're cattle.
Yeah. Instead, what you see
we're cattle.
is decreasing democratization, and increasing corporate control and increasing militarist kind of police state control.
Yeah.
And it's scary because this isn't the country that we grew up in.
We're cattle, and the oligarchs are in such a bloodlust that they will even attack each other and cannibalize each other. I mean, when you take a look at the dynamics that are going on, you know, with some of the corporate mergers and so on, there's, you know, oligarchs will give themselves like a golden parachute or whatever, but I mean, they go after each other. Yeah. Okay? I mean, look, a major thing that's going on behind the scenes in the election is the fact that there's two oligarchs, both very, very ambitious, very evil, I think by any standards, demonstrably evil. Okay? One is this guy Trump, who sort of wiggled around and jiggled around and shriggled around and somehow or other got to be the candidate of this totally intellectually lifeless party called the Republican Party. And he got to do that in part because he didn't buy into all of the specific bullshit, okay, that the Republicans did, which is like all this like institutional libertarian horse crap, you know, anti-regulation, everything. So, yeah, he goes, oh, I'll take that, or maybe I won't. And, you know, the people on the base were going like, wow, there's like a human here infecting the Republican Party. We're going to support him, okay? Right. So there's this guy. But now there's another big oligarch that decided he was going to get to be active. It's this guy, Jeff Bezos. Now, Jeff Bezos runs sweatshops, okay? These sweatshops are called warehouses. They're like tens or hundreds of thousands of square feet, okay? And the conditions that the people are work in his warehouses are unbelievable. I mean, the kinds of things that we would normally think of, oh, that's the way they treat labor in China. No, that's the way Jeff Bezos brainwashes and mind fucks people right here in America. You know, everybody's on the spot all the time begging for their job and so on and so on. This has all been exposed. Well, now this guy takes over the Washington Post, okay? And he decides he's going to be Hillary Clinton's best friend. So now all of a sudden you got a big, big oligarch who's come down in control of the Republican Party. And you got a big, big oligarch that's come down to a large extent in control of the Democratic Party. And they have their allies and so on. Wow. But these are amateurs. So
Citizens United helped with this. Corporate ownership of media helps with this. And I think it's also what is opening up, and the newest political generation, the millennial generation, to looking for something else. Yeah. And that's where we are. I mean, we're with a generation that wants, you know, what is it, like 50% don't think socialism is necessarily a bad thing. Many millennials.
It's better than that. It's better than that.
Right, but I mean, the numbers are off the charts.
60, 70% are saying like, hey, socialism sounds good.
Right.
Yeah, that's and the way Jim describes it, though, too, is to talk about the oligarchical power behind both of the only two choices we have to recognize that in the absence of the Green Party or a viable third party, we have no choice.
I think the Democratic Party recognizes that there's an opportunity right now to keep going and to try and attract millennials and progressives. You don't see it in their leadership. But you know, what's his name? Tom Perez is out stomping with Bernie right now.
With Bernie, yeah, okay. So, that's something we need to talk about tonight, too.
Okay.
We need to talk about that. Yeah. That's another reason to be a Green, okay?
While
Bernie is out with Tom Perez.
Are still taking corporate money, and the DNC voted to maintain corporate donations, and they're really not changing at all. The electorate has changed, and the electorate is continuing to change. And that's where the opportunity is that we need people who supported Bernie Sanders. We need millennials to realize that their interests are outside of the corporate duopoly. They're outside of the Democratic Party, and they're not going to change the Democratic Party. The Green Party is here as an existing third party that can grow the way that the Republican Party came from nowhere to become the second major party in the time of Abraham Lincoln.
Sure.
You know, this is the opportunity
and
we see now.
It was a pretty good party back then.
It was a pretty good party, yeah.
If we were back then, if we were back in the 1860s, we'd all be Republicans.
I think we've got a cause here. We've got the Green New Deal, and this party has espoused it. We've put it on the table, and you know what? I think people are starting to talk about it. Not just people who are Greens, but I think, you know, maybe the Democrats will pick it up. But you know what? this is the cause.
But
celeb
that maybe we've been hoping
this
for
time.
that maybe for all of my lifetime. We're waxing national again. What's Connecticut's role in this?
Well,
we
have
anti-fracking
anti-fracking ordinances.
I'm feeling a little sticky about is when you say, well, maybe the Democrats will pick up on this. I'm like, you know what? I don't think I want to personally. I bought into that fantasy too many times, and
I can't even help the Democrats in Connecticut. I can't. I mean, look, if this guy down in Georgia, what's his name, Ossoff or something, okay, if he wins by some miracle, today, actually gets 50% of the vote and so on, I'll go like, hey, that's a good thing, okay? There's some resistance to Trump. But that's not going to make me buy back into the Democratic Party bullshit again.
No. But there are things that we can do in Connecticut. Look at our neighbors. Maine, referendum, ranked choice voting. They've enacted that. It's a reality. Massachusetts, marijuana legalization. They've enacted that. It's a reality. New York, bowing to the pressure of progressives, $15 minimum wage, free public college. And Hillary Clinton came out to claim credit for that, but this came straight from the Bernie Sanders campaign, and she dismissed it as pie in the sky. So there are things that we can grab onto and enact in Connecticut, and these are things that we should be fighting for. Are these town issues? No, these are not really so much town issues, but these are state issues. At the town level, I think there are things like anti-fracking ordinances that we're working on.
And we can easily put together a 100% renewable energy plan for the state and make that a platform. And that undergirds so much. Where our energy comes from and what we do to get it, in terms of keeping fossil fuels flowing and the destruction that's actually emerging from that process of continuing to find and get that harder and harder fossil fuel out of the ground. As an energy person, I want to throw that in. And the anti-fracking thing is fairly strong on a local level. Yeah. And by the way, the Green Party of Connecticut, we're gonna talk about this before we're done. But on this, what do you guys? What will you say is special about this ballot for the Green Party that was mentioned just a moment ago?
Right. So we have an election coming up. If you're a registered Green, or if you register quickly as a Green, you can take part in this election.
Very
it's April
quickly.
30th. April 30th. So it's
very
2 weeks.
quickly as a Green.
Annual meeting April 30th.
April 30th. Yeah. We've got candidates for chair, for secretary, for treasurer, and for representatives to the national party. And people are voting by ranked choice voting. So we've got 8 candidates for co-chair, 3 slots will be filled. If you vote for 1, 2, 3, 4, and your first person does not make it into the top 3, then your next 3 slots that you voted for will move up, and that's the way.
And we promised each other that we're not going to explain ranked choice voting
there's a great,
on this show.
Yeah,
but
there's great videos
online.
I'm gonna coin a phrase.
Okay, which you're good at.
If we don't change the way we vote, then there really is no hope.
There you go.
Okay, because unless we use elements of ranked choice voting and proportional representation to open up the political system, unless that has to be part of everything else. Yeah. Because the way that the U.S. political system is operating now, it literally squelches thought.
It's completely closed to monopolized parties.
Absolutely closed. You have these 2 corporate parties that have. It doesn't even make any sense. Look, you don't have to get rid of capitalism to have a living political system. People who come from real living political systems feel really bad for us. I'm going to name 2 political systems, and it's going to be controversial because nobody's going to like either
Russia?
One of these systems. No, Russia does not have a good electoral system. It's got a worse electoral system than, they've been taking everything out of the electoral realm, putting in the appointed realm and so on, and you have this. I have been to Russia, though, recently, okay, and I can tell you that a couple of things. Number one, don't try to go to war against these people. They're a whole lot healthier and more vigorous than you think they are. And they're a whole lot more sensible. And the basic message that they told me, and I speak enough Russian that we could actually get down a little bit, was we don't hate Americans. If we're going to hate anybody, it's Germans, because they killed somebody from every one of our families. So, and you haven't killed any of us yet, and let's keep it that way, okay? So that's the thing with it.
So what are the countries that you were going to mention?
I'm going to name two countries. It's controversial. Israel has a very active political system. Okay, they have preferential voting. They have aspects of proportional representation. They have a multi-party democratic system inside of an apartheid ethnic organ. So you can have huge contradictions here.
Yeah.
But it's a living political system for those people who are enfranchised. And you notice the parties are different as the issues change, and these are terrible issues for Israel. Terrible. Israel is a tragic situation.
And what's the other country?
Ireland. Ireland has a multi-party democracy that hums along, and even though socially and many other respects, I mean, Ireland is like tragically, crazily backward. The political system is extremely vital. Everybody's involved. Participation rates are very, very high, and they did something that no other country in the world has done. And in the middle of all this social regression and so on that they have, Ireland actually had a referendum in which they voted for gay marriage. That hasn't happened anyplace else. So you want to talk about a system that's political, because look, in Ireland, if you're going to do anything important, you have to have a national referendum. You have to have a plebiscite. Okay? So gay marriage is a constitutional change. Oh, the Irish forgot that you have this group of like strange people all from the same university and so on, who all have to get together on a special court, and they're the ones who decide what goes into the Constitution. Right. No. They had just come through a terrible revolution in the 1920s, and they said, you know what? If we're going to change this Constitution, we're going to have an election for everybody. Yeah. And that's what they have to do.
Yeah. So, and interesting what you're talking about, we know each other from the Occupy movement, and it was an effort to organize those same ideas locally. Shoreline, Occupy Shoreline, you guys helped found it.
That's how we met. That's how we met.
And I remember my experience with that
we
group.
didn't found it. We had to purge the person who found it, but go ahead.
There you go. So, and this may be related to what I wanted to say, it's just that what I discovered in that group was that one of the first things we need to do is to remember how to get along.
Right.
The reason I say that is that the problems that we actually face in the world today are predicaments, and they require thoughtful response. There's not solutions available, but we can respond. And our best responses will come from learning to work together and have a collective creativity to address these issues. And that's what your comments about democracy say to me, and what your comments about
that's why we have to open the system
that
up.
are absolutely and open it.
Have to open it up.
So we actually have 5 minutes left, and the one thing I did ask is that before we and maybe even less than 5, that we just talk about a couple of events so people know about them.
Oh, yeah.
April 30th is the Green Party annual meeting. And where's it taking place, Owen?
It's in Portland.
It is in Portland at the Senior Center as well?
7 Waverly Place in Portland at the Senior Center.
And that's also where Dr. Jill Stein will be coming to speak a week prior to that on April 23rd, correct?
Yeah, she'll be there at 1 o'clock. There's a fundraiser party event going on from 12 to 4. And they'll
in fact, the music of Fee Fi Fo will be featured starting at noon.
Yep.
And
FUM has left the group, as they say.
Oh, just Fee and Fee Fi?
Fee
and
Fi.
Green Party speakers,
FUM is a dissident. Yeah.
Yep.
Jill Stein at 1 o'clock, so that's also at the Senior Center in the Waverly Senior Center in Portland.
23rd, yeah.
Now, I also received a text today from our friend Dan Fisher about the Gandhi Peace Awards, which is this Sunday. It's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at Yale, and 2 recipients of the Gandhi Peace Prize will be Ralph Nader and
Barghouti.
Barghouti.
Yep.
What's his first name?
I can't remember.
I don't have the text.
So you can see Jill Stein at 1, and then drive down.
Is that Sunday?
Yeah, it's Sunday.
Okay.
But then you can drive down and see Ralph at 4.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to read that text, and you had one other one that you wanted to mention as well.
Well,
Amy
Wesleyan.
Goodman.
Amy Goodman
will be at Wesleyan at noon on Monday the 24th.
Okay, the day after.
The day
so this
after.
is very busy.
Okay.
We're going to go to all these things.
And I think
if people have ever heard Amy Goodman, it's just a good experience.
Tremendous. And I have seen her speak at
of Democracy Now.
Up in New
just
Bedford.
A great experience.
So the Gandhi Peace Awards are Sunday, April 23rd, 4 p.m. at Yale's SSS Hall Room at number 114 at 1 Prospect Street.
And Amy is talking at Beckham Hall at Wesleyan.
Beckham Hall.
At noon.
Okay.
On Monday.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And I did want to mention the March for Science. It's a global event happening this Saturday. From 11 to 1, I believe there's an event in Niantic. I will be there. I hope some of our Shoreline Green Party will be there to just advocate for evidence-based science. You know,
and I want to give
reality-based.
people some hope for the Green Party. On Sunday, Easter Sunday, I don't know what it was that caused us to schedule the meeting on Easter Sunday. We just went a little crazy, but we did it. And then we found out that Colin Bennett didn't leave us the keys for the usual place that we meet. So we had to leave a sign on the door saying, Green Party meeting at the Dunkin' Donuts.
Wow.
In
Deep
Chester.
River.
In Deep River.
Which
in
is
Deep
where I
River,
live.
In Deep River, Green Party meeting there and everything. On Easter, 3 o'clock at Easter, well, most people are like comatose with chocolate. 11 people showed up from the Shoreline.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. We've
So
had
thank
a
you, Owen Charles,
strong
James
group.
Conolly, for joining us. The Green Party has more hope. We've always had hope, but you guys are inspirational, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm with you. I'm Michael Harris, itinerant guest host of Thinking Green. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. Dream